Hello, this is Christian Okoye, former Kansas City Chief. You are listening to Grilling Truth.
Welcome to the Grilling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and today we have a special show. For everybody that listens to the Grilling Truth, you know we deal with a lot of former athletes, past and present, so not just former, but all those guys have one thing in common. They all have injuries. And the big thing a lot of times into being a big-time athlete is to being able to recover quickly. Also, if you're a weekend warrior, you know, you got a 9-to-5 job, but you like to go out and play softball or whatever you like to do on the weekends. If you get injured, that can affect your actual real job. So in the past few weeks, it's been brought to my attention a company called Replenishing Technologies. That basically Replenishing Technologies is something that can help you get back on your feet, get you back to your job, get you back playing the sport you love, a lot quicker than what you could without Replenishing Technologies. So today I want everybody to help me welcome the founder of Replenishing Technologies, James Comerford. How you doing, James?
I'm doing very well, Mike, and thank you for that great introduction about RTI.
All right, so tell us a little bit about Replenishing Technologies.
Replenishing Technologies is a distributor of a device called the PEMF 120. PEMF stands for Pulsed Electromagnetic Field, and again, obviously it gets reduced down to PEMF. What a PEMF machine is, and specifically what the PEMF 120 is a battery charger for cells. A lot of people aren't as familiar with the idea that cells are actually electric. And one of the most important aspects of human health, wellness, and athletic performance is having our cells fully charged. What the PEMF 120 will do is it actually delivers a very gentle energy into the body, and it's controllable, so we adjust it to different levels for different people and situations. But basically that energy goes into the body and is drawn to any cell that is undercharged electrically. And those cells will actually invite or draw the energy to them, if you will, and they will in turn constrict, force toxins out, and draw the energy in. And essentially the upside of all of that is after about 15 minutes of using the PEMF 120, about 95% of people report less pain, increased range of energy, or increased range of motion, more energy and a greater sense of well-being. And essentially they will hold that improvement for 4 hours to 4 days, and with repeat use you actually hold it a bit longer. What's exciting about that for someone who's an athlete or somebody who's a weekend warrior, as you say, which is what I consider myself to be, or even somebody that's further along that continuum and not quite able to do the things they'd like to be doing, is that this energy will start their body in a healing direction. It will actually utilize their own body's ability to heal. And so basically the technology doesn't discriminate one bit at all. It actually works with whatever there is to work with. So pretty much everybody can look to this as a way of getting themselves back on their feet, as you said, being able to perform at their best, and basically enjoying life to the fullest.
All right, so when we have our former athletes on, the big thing with me is how did you get to where you are today? So my question is this, with Replenishing Technologies, how did you get to this point?
Well, for me personally, I'm now 61. When I was 40, I contracted an illness called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which medical historians now realize is what FDR had. So I went at the age of 40 from running about 50 miles a week to not being able to stand up for 50 seconds in about 10 days. And I don't mind saying I made peace with God, figured I was on my way out the whole thing. Fortunately, I guess given all the running I was doing and some other things, including great medical intervention, I made one of the most dramatic recoveries from Guillain-Barré in medical history. Even ran a marathon later that year and had a personal best in a 10-mile run. And most of the folks around me, including my doctors, kind of did a touchdown dance and said he's fully recovered and all of those things. Well, I was in my body for 40 years at that point in time, and I knew a lot of things simply weren't working the way that they used to work. And in keeping with what an internist had told me, it's, Guillain-Barré affects the body by essentially eating the sheath off the nerves throughout our body, so we slowly go paralyzed starting in the feet and working their way up. And medical intervention basically works like using duct tape, that if you imagined a wire that had been cut and you spliced it back together and wrapped it with duct tape, it would work, but never quite the same. And I remember that metaphor really speaking to me in terms of understanding what was going on in my body. So it was a full 9 years later when I had my first exposure to high-powered pulsed electromagnetic field. And as I said, at that point, most people considered me back living normally, but I knew the difference. In any case, when I first put the energy on my legs, which had been most affected by the Guillain-Barré, to go back to the idea that cells that draw it will draw the energy to them, constrict and force toxins out. It was literally like watching a fish on dry land as the cells in my legs, for want of a better term, rejoiced by finally coming in contact with something that understood what had actually gone on in my body. As you can imagine, it made me an advocate for it rather quickly. I've been working with the technology for 10 years plus, have sold hundreds of the devices and supported quite a number of practitioners who've worked literally with thousands of people, as I've worked with quite a number myself. And what's amazing about it is, as much as it's gratifying to see very outstanding results, far beyond what anybody ever expected, you never get tired of seeing it. And I've seen dramatic results with athletes returning to competition at full recovery about 40% of the expected time. I've seen people who were dealing with illnesses recover significantly from what their prognosis was or what was ever expected. And people who are somewhere in the middle of those two continuums use the device and simply say they feel a whole lot better, have a whole lot more energy, and so forth. So, that's kind of how I got introduced to the PEMF technology. And for want of, I guess, if I look at it overall, I think Guillain-Barré happened for me and not to me. It put me on a path that's all about cellular health, both for me and trying to spread the word in order to help others.
Yeah, and the thing is, everything happens in a reason in our lives. I mean, it's something I firmly believe. And, I mean, it has to be great for you just to see all the people you've helped. I mean, when you go and you do a little background research on Replenishing Technologies and your companies, I mean, you find MS patients that have been helped, an ALS patient who hadn't raised his hand raised his hand for the first time in 12 months, diabetics you've seen. So it has to really be great for you to have something that helped you be able to help other people, later on.
Well, I mean, as you say, everything happens for a reason, and I'm pretty sure the reason I was put on this planet was to play some role in bringing these kind of technologies forward, and specifically the PEMF 120. And had Guillain-Barré not happened, I rather doubt I'd be in the place I'm in right now. Thank you for, kind of sharing what you've seen in regards to some of the, what I would call compelling cases I've seen. One of the ones I most rejoice in was a lady in Florida who at 70 experienced a stroke and had been bedridden for about 7 years and unable to speak, and her family essentially knew from her body language and what she was able to communicate despite not being able to speak that she was in a whole lot of pain. And she actually ended up buying a machine for home use. And in literally a weekend, the mom went from not being able to speak and being in pain to being able to articulate the fact that she was feeling better and had a whole lot less pain. So when you hear those kind of things, you get excited. And just to add to that, to this, event, if you will, or this experience, I reached out to the lady who bought the machine to help her mom who'd had the stroke a couple of years ago in about 2015. And the reason I did is I was working with somebody in the Toronto, Canada area that was in a similar circumstance with the stroke circumstance or the stroke experience. And before I had a chance to even ask her, the lady, the daughter, shared with me about a story that had happened to her, an experience in which she was in a car accident at about 70 miles an hour. And when she came to, she looked down and her right femur was trying to poke out through her jeans. And to her astonishment and dismay, when she looked down at where her right foot was supposed to be, it was actually turned upside down and hanging by skin. So she was transported to, a surgical unit where they did a remarkable job addressing those situations and dealing with some other broken bones in her body. But what actually occurred is after the surgery was completed, no one could understand why she was trying to get out of the hospital early and return home. And anyway, they did release her after several days. And the moment she got home, she started using the PEMF 120 on her ankle in particular and some of her other injuries. And she actually walked without a cane 5 months later by virtue of using the PEMF 120 on top of the surgery and on top of the wonderful physical therapy that she had. And so, when you hear those kind of stories or circumstances, it makes you, only want to advocate for the device more. And we've seen diabetic neuropathy patients or clients in our case have feeling in their feet, having not had it for many, many years. And we've worked with some major athletes who were dealing with injury or simply not feeling 100% as they prepared for competition, who used the device to basically boost their energy and just kind of raise their well-being. And again, when you keep hearing these things over and over again, it makes it really easy to advocate the use of the device with as many people as you can possibly reach.
All right, so this has already done amazing things. I mean, where is Replenishing Technologies headed in the future?
Well, what happened for me, to go kind of tell the full story, is about 13 years ago, I became involved in a mission, I suppose, to create what I called the Clinic of the Future. And the whole idea behind it was, the idea of a patient working with some other patients wanting to help, as many people as possible have better options for staying well and for getting over different types of conditions. And when we first started out, we put together this massive list of all the illnesses and all the types of therapies that we need, only to find that we came down to a very small group of technologies headed by the PEMF 120 as to what we felt everybody should be doing if they wanted to avoid aging, prevent illness, mitigate the effects of current illness, perform at their best, live life to the fullest, all of those kind of things that we all aspire to. So where Replenishing Technologies is going and has already started to go is the creation of a company called Replenishing Care, and within Replenishing Care Corporation, a model that we actually call Replenishing Care that puts 11-plus technologies together, each of which work pretty similarly in terms of kind of design as the PEMF 120 does, in that it works at the cellular level, does no harm, boosts the body's own ability to heal, works with whatever an individual has to work with. But we've put them all together in one model, so that in kind of a concept that I call stacking, whereby you get the multiple benefits of multiple technologies put together in one model, so that you get essentially the value of each one bringing out the best in the other, which they do, and likewise giving a one-stop option where people can get all of these in kind of one source, and not only get the benefits of using them collectively, but also cut down on the amount of time and effort required to find them and fit their use into their day without it starting to be something that interferes with their day. So where we're going with this whole thing is a model called Replenishing Care that we're looking to bring all the way around throughout North America and around the world to make these technologies readily available to everyone who needs them. Candidly, that's anyone who has cells.
Yeah, that's everybody needs it. Now, let's talk. Many of our audience are former, current athletes. How does Replenishing Technologies relate to them, their trainers, their coaches, their therapists? Who care? I mean, the people that care for the athletes, I mean, why is this such a big deal for them in their field? I mean, it's pretty obvious to me, but I'd like to hear it in your words.
Well, from an athlete's standpoint, I mean, it's all about performance and it's all about legacy. So in terms of performance, the technologies, the PEMF 120 and the others I just alluded to, will help an athlete perform at his or her best. It is what I call legal competitive advantage that's actually good for an athlete. So often athletes get pushed or encouraged to do things that may not always be in their best health interest. What we do actually is in their best interest, and also in terms of helping them achieve the goals and things that they're doing on behalf of themselves, their teams, their families, and so forth. One of the things that I particularly like about being involved with these technologies is that they amplify everything else that an athlete or a person is doing. So if you're training properly, if you're taking in lots of water, if you're getting the right amount of sleep, eating properly, using these devices will actually amplify the benefits of doing those healthy things in the first place. And what they also do is elevate and amplify the benefits of professional training and professional coaching. And there are some amazing people that work with athletes who bring an enormous contribution to the health and welfare of the athlete. And what we do literally reinforces the wonderful things that they're doing. So, and I think also as you look at an athlete moving along in his or her career, we've seen Olympians use a couple of the different technologies and record personal bests in their 40s. So when you start thinking about the benefits of an athlete wanting to remain, playing at that top level, staying an extra couple of seasons, when they're at the peak of their income, and able to therefore provide more for their family on the other side of the playing days, retire on their own, kind of on their own terms a little bit, or go out gracefully, and ultimately have an extra year or two to go deeper into the record books. Those are all things that an athlete can look at in terms of what it will do for he or she, and obviously for those people that care about the athletes and care for them, whether it's as a trainer, as a coach, or an owner of a team. All of these types of mutually beneficial goals can be achieved by using these technologies. Again, specifically the PEMF, to keep an athlete as healthy as possible, and performing at their best. And that's what these things do.
All right, so what is the one thing you'd want anyone listening to us today to take away from this discussion?
The number one thing, Mike, is that people need to realize that we can do better than the standard that has been set. And I don't want to knock our health system. The health system literally took me out of a terrible circumstance when I had Guillain-Barré. It gave me my life back. And a year ago, when I had hernia surgery at 60, I had a tremendous surgeon repair an injury that needed to be repaired. But what I would say is that if I had followed standard medical recommendations and things of that nature, I would not be doing at 61 the type of things that I'm doing, which incidentally includes training for a 5K run in September, in which I'm looking to take about 3 minutes off an already respectable 5K time a year ago. And I'm a weekend warrior. I'm not some great athlete. I'm a weekend warrior, but I'm able to do things at 61 that candidly would challenge most 30-year-olds, maybe not some of the 30-year-old athletes that compete at elite levels, but for the average 30-year-old, I'd probably be able to challenge them. And I don't say that arrogantly. I just say it as a guy who had some things happen for him that most people would have thought were negatives that ultimately introduced me to the kind of technologies and methods that basically have contributed to sending wellness in me. And to go back to the hernia surgery, I had hernia surgery last July on the 4th. I had it done in Canada, if you're wondering why the surgeons were working that day. 9 days later, I was back to full workout because of the technologies that I have. And that's a 60-year-old guy able to even, to go out and run 5 miles and do oblique sit-ups 9 days after hernia surgery simply because of these devices. So, it may be a bit of a long-winded answer, but the bottom line is that it's time people realize that there are things out there far beyond what we accept as the norm. And sometimes things sound too good to be true, but they don't necessarily have to be. And cellular health technologies is, in my estimation, and I'm the poster child of it, if you will, or living proof, that we can have ascending wellness and best performance much later in life than most people anticipate or expect if we turn to the right things. And the PEMF 120 is one of those things, and what we've assembled in the replenishing care model around us are also some of those things. And we're looking for people who are passionate and interested in discovering these kind of things, employing them in their life, and living life to the fullest, and helping those around them do the same, to connect with us and have a chat and just see if we can't help them the way that we've helped ourselves and many other people.
Now, anybody that's interested in get a hold of you or find out more information about Replenishing Technologies, where did it go to do that?
Well, there's the website is www.replenishingtechnologiesinc.com. The other website is www.replenishingcare.com. If you search both of them, you'll see they look a fair bit alike because obviously they're very closely affiliated. But it would be my special pleasure if people reached out and gave us a phone call. The number for that is 289-868-8862. And again, we'd really love to have a chance to chat and share what we've learned to see if we can't help some other people.
Yeah, and if you go to the website, replenishingtechnologiesinc.com, you'll realize even if it sounds too good to be true, there's plenty of concrete information backing this up. James, it was great to have you on the show today. Would love to have you back sometime to talk a little bit more about it.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, and appreciate your time. And it's real exciting what's going on in your family with the athlete you have on foot there. So we'll be keeping an eye on him for sure.
All right, guys. I want to remind everybody you can check out all of our shows on iHeartRadio, Google Play, TuneIn, Google Music, iTunes, wherever you find any kind of sports podcast, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for James Comerford, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.